Hello and welcome back to another video lecture. In this lecture, we'll try to create a question and answer game that can be played between multiple different instances of this game, or maybe even between multiple different computers. And we will be doing that by setting up a database. And if we create a global database that can be accessed from any computer, then the game can be played from wherever we want. So this is going to be a basic window that we're going to create. We'll have a question text. Let's have the select tool. We'll have a question text on the top. We'll show some status row. Either the question is answered correctly or incorrectly. Then there will be an answer input field where we can answer the question. And on the top right, we will show the total tries and your tries. And this will be shown because we will show the actual question that is up for everybody, and while everybody is trying to find answer to it, we are keeping count of total tries that have been taken by all the players in the game. And so you'll be able to see how many have tried and how many times you have tried. And basically the idea is you are shown the question, you're trying to answer it. If you are the first one to answer, great. If not, then we'll show maybe you are too late. Let's have a next question. Maybe you'll be able to skip question, answer it, or maybe give up and exit the program at all. So this is kind of the basic idea I want to create. To start, I want to tell you if you are using a local database, you can use examp, start a MySQL server. For example, this is just an example. I started Heidi and created a database for this project already, calling it the database Q&A game. And I have two database tables. One is table question, which has an ID, a question text, an answer text, which is the correct answer. A Boolean value is answered, meaning is this question still up to answer, or is it already answered and it has a winner? It has somebody who answered it correctly. And also this winner name, whoever answers it correctly the first, right? And then we have answer tries, because each question everybody will try to answer it correctly, and most of the answers probably will be incorrect, right? If it's, well, that's kind of idea. If it's a difficult question, then everybody will try and mostly fail. And then there will be an ID of this try, an ID of the question. So which question does this answer try belong to? Because we'll have multiple questions, and each answer will belong to one particular question. The player name, simple, the text that is the answer, the actual answer that user has inputted, and Boolean variable, is the answer correct according to the question? Is the text the same as in question? Is this answer the winner to that question? And we'll save also an answer time as a date time in the database. And nothing specific, only these two Boolean variables are 0 as a default value. What do we have at the question? Yeah, empty strings, 0 is a default value for is answered, and winner name is null at the beginning, just because we can have no winner at the beginning, right? We have no value. And to start up, we can create a new Java project. Let's call it, I don't know, Q&A game. And one thing we need right off the bat, we need to import the database external library, so we will be able to connect to MySQL database. And this is MySQL connector. Apply and close, and we are able to start. So let's create a first class, which will hold a main method. Let's call it start for this project. And have a main method, everything's fine. Let's have another two. One will be database, DB is short for database. And another one, we can call it question frame or answer frame. But I think it's answer frame, or maybe game frame. maybe like that. Let's move it over. Okay, the first thing we can try to do is create a new game frame with no variables in the no parameters in the constructor, and let's just create a basic JFrame. Extends JFrame, import it, cool, and create a constructor. Game frame, no parameters, everything's fine. So in the basics, we usually need to do, I like to set title. Another one is set bounds. So bounds is x value is pixels from the left side on the x-axis, which is horizontal. Pixels from the top of the screen, which is vertical on the vertical axis, and width and height also in pixels. So we can say maybe 200 from the left, 100 from the top, and maybe width and height we can set as integer values. Width will be, well, I have a small screen, so let's say 700 for now. Height, definitely wrong. Height is, well, let's say 500 for now. You can also take a screen width and calculate maybe like 80% of the screen or 50%, but I'll just have a simple values for now. We'll also create a variable called container. And we'll say this class is container, is going to be this JFrames get content pane. This is the one. So on this container, we always want to add new elements, new JLabels, and or new whatever, maybe new JPanels and everything else. So we have a content pane. What we can do right now is this con set background color. Again, it's trying to change it. Set background, and use a color classes method decode, and we can pass the color as a string. Let's have it, this is sort of gray, let's have it a little bit more green, like sort of green. It's going to be pretty dark, should be pretty dark. What else? This set default close operation, which we will set to JFrame's default value exit on close, which means when we click the top right close button, this X on the top right, it will actually close the JFrame and finish the program as well. It will terminate it for good. And then we say set visible true, so the frame is actually visible. Do we have everything? I think so. Let's try to run it. And we can see that we have the basic frame. Come on, jump back. No, it's not jumping back. Okay. So we have the basic frame. We can start working from here. The first thing we need to add are some of these elements that we had in the frame. So we'll start with question text. And what I'm going to do is come here and say, we will pass a question. Let's say, who let the dogs out? We'll pass an answer as well. What can we say? Whoo-Hoo-Hoo. Okay. And then we'll set the constructor to string. It accepts string question and string answer as well. And we'll set those as private string, these class variables, so they can be accessible from any method within this class. Question and private string answer. I'm setting them to private because do not need to be accessible from anywhere outside this class. We'll keep it strictly within this class. So we won't be able to, if we have GameFrame GF is that, we won't be able to access it from gf.question. Right, it's not accessible, it's private within that class. So this question is the past question. This answer is the past answer. Maybe we can set it to correct answer. Sort of sounds better. We understand which kind of answer it is. Okay, we have it, and then before we set it to visible, we can create an init function, which will basically create all these labels and input fields and buttons in it. Well, it's actually short of initialization of creating it, but actually it also holds the other idea. We put in the init method everything that will be in it in this class. So it's sort of weird word game. Okay, this can also be private. I think we won't need it outside this class, but we will be able to change it with no problem later on if we need it. So initialization, what we need to do is add a question label, answer input field, these try label, and maybe some buttons, and also I'll call it status label, which will be this one, which holds your status. Have you answered correctly, incorrectly, or maybe we'll add time later, and maybe it will say your time has run out, or something like that. So we're not going to actually create those labels only within this class, within this method, because we'll be accessing those labels from different methods in this class as well. So I don't know if we need it private. Well, let's say private for now. So private JLabel, let's call them as they are, question label. Import the JLabel class. This will be a try label, and this is going to be a status label. So label is just a string of text that is shown on the screen, and the answer is not going to be a JLabel, it's going to be a JText field. Text field, answer input, right? Sounds good for this one. And now we can actually create them in here. Let's start with the first one. So this class is question label, is going to be a new JLabel. And in the constructor, we can pass what kind of text is going to hold. And the text within this question label is going to be this class's question, because we want to show the question in the question label, right? Pretty obvious. And another thing we can set is this bounds, or set bounds, right? Set bounds, yes, of course. And we are setting the position of the JLabel within this frame, just as we did with the JFrame within our screen. So we can set the bounds to, I don't know, let's say 60 from the left, 30 from the top, so we have some kind of paddings or margins from sides. And width is going to be, let's say 500 for now. And height is going to be 30 pixels. And then we say this class is container. I don't like the name. If we have okay, let's rename this one to container so it doesn't autofill to this other element that's driving me crazy already. Some errors, whatever, let's do it manually. If we do it, yeah, okay, that's better. Container, add, and we are adding a component to this container, and the component is this class's question label. But to be able to add elements to this frame in any place where we want, we are strictly setting these bounds. We want to set the layout to whatever we want to do. So basically, each frame has his own specific layout. Is it a I don't even remember them. I only remember box layouts or box something layouts. But basically, if we want to do whatever we want, we just simply have to say this container set layout to null. So it doesn't have any layout. We are telling it what to do. So we set the layout to null and set the position, set the text to the JLabel, added to the container, and I think we're good to go. Let's see what happens. It's not in the right size, and we don't have the text as well. One thing we can say for sure is that if the text would be the default black, we wouldn't be able to see it. Maybe we would see, but we wouldn't see it correctly. So one thing I want to add is a font that we'll be able to use for these labels in this frame. So let's call it title font and create a new font object. And here we can see what we can pass. So the font constructor can take the name of a font, style, and size of it. So that's what you're going to do. We're going to take one of the font class's defaults, sans serif. The style also has defaults. One is bold, italic, plain, and should be like underscore, whatever. But we will have a bold as the title, and size will be 20, just 20 points. And so what we're going to do is say this question label, we're going to set foreground. And foreground is the color that we are using for the text and for borders, for example. Background is what's in the back, obviously, and foreground is what's used for the text and other things. And for this, we are setting the title font as the foreground color. Oh wait, this is not, I wanted to say the color is white. I don't know, I said the font, but the color, foreground color is going to be white, and the question labels set font is going to be the title font, obviously. There we go. Then we have added the label. And now we can try to run it again. So we still see that we don't have the JLabel, obviously. Okay, the problem is that we set the bounds to this, so to the frame, not to the question object. So the question label set bounds. We need to set bounds to this label, not to the whole object, to the whole frame, right? So we can run it again, and now we can see everything's fine. So we have the frame at the position, at the width and height, and we said the foreground is in the front with the text has the color is white. The font is sans serif, bold, and 20 size, and the label itself is 500 pixels wide and 30 pixels high. And the label is added to the container. This is great, but when we need to add, let's add the status label. So we need to do pretty much the same thing. Status label is new JLabel the status at the beginning will be, well, try to answer the question quickly. Maybe something like that. And then, again, set foreground to white. We're not going to have the same kind of font. We'll create a, let's call it status font or text font. Yeah, let's have a text font. It will be font plain. And let's have it maybe at 16, sorry. And so for this one, we'll have, if we copy everything, the font will be this one. We are adding this label, and the size will be, let's have it again 60 from the left, but from the top, let's have it at 70 pixels. And width and height can be the same. If we are running the program again, we can see everything's fine, but the problem is that if we are creating another couple of labels, and maybe we'll add some other more later, then we'll need to copy the same type of code over and over again. So what we can do is create a private void, or not void, private JLabel method. We'll call it create new label. And we're going to pass those elements that are dynamic to each new label. So one is the text that we are adding in the constructor, the font that we are setting to the element, and color for the foreground. Color. And what we can do is copy everything from here and say not this label, but just a label. And we can return this label back. So the text in here is the text that we are passing. The font is the font we passed, and the color is the color we passed. Maybe we'll set bounds. Yeah, we can also set bounds in here. Say int x, int y, int width, and int height. X, y, width, and height. And so when we are creating new JLabel, we are saying that it is create new label method, and as the method returns new JLabel, we are going to put this JLabel in this question label class variable. And what we need to pass here is the text, which was, what was it? It was this class's question. The font is title font for this one. The color is color white. And these ones I already forgot, but I think it was 60, 30, 500, and 30 high. And then the same for status label. We can copy this one and say status label will have, let's put it just like that for now. String of this, the font is a text font, color will be white again, and this will be, I think it was, yeah, 70 from the top. And that's it. We have cleared, we have a little helper function, and we have cleared the basic init function, made it a lot cleaner, and we can also add the try label without even thinking. So try label, create new label, and in here we will have a text of, where's my beautiful drawing, these total tries and your tries. And the problem is, if we want to break that in two lines, we need to have either two labels or add HTML as the text to it, and we're going to do the second one. So let's have it as a string. Try HTML, and we will wrap everything in an HTML tag. which is the only real requirement to be able to run HTML within this text in the constructor. And we can have it as a div. We'll have it as a div tag, so we can add some kind of styling later on if we need. So for now, we can say total tries is 0, and then we can simply use a break tag, or we can actually add 2 divs to it. It's your choice, but this is a little simpler, and your tries is also 0. Okay, and then we set this try HTML as this label's text. It will also have a text font, and the position is going to be a little bit different. We will set it to 550 from the left, and if the frame is 700 wide, so this 500 from the left actually means 150 pixels from the right side, and it will be at the same height as, or actually a little bit under the question label, and we'll have it 120 wide and 60 high. 120 wide, so we have 30 pixels from the right side. If we're adding this one and this one together, then it will still have a little bit left on the right side. And we have the 60 from the top and 60 high. And if we are running it, we can see we have some kind of little bit more of stuff. So basically it's 550 to this point, and then 120, I think it's a little bit more than it takes right now. And then we have 30 pixels left on the right side, so it's not really close to the frame, so like this. So it's a little bit better looking. One thing I want to do is add a little bit of border around it. We can do it with HTML in here, or we can do it with actual JFrame, with the Java-based solution. So we can try this try label, set border, and we need to add a border, a new border, and we can create a new one by using border factory, create line border, and there are 3 available options what you can use. I'm going to use the second one. I'm going to use a color and a thickness. The color will be white, and thickness, let's have it at 2 for now. Yeah, okay, that's kind of it. If we run it, we can see we have a border, but it's sort of too close to the left side. We want a little bit of padding to it. So that we can actually use this div for, and say style, and let's say, wait, we don't need double quotes, we need single quotes, and padding is, let's have 5 pixels. If we run it again, we can see it's a little bit better. We can maybe have 7 pixels or something else if you want, no problem. We can maybe, how does it look with 7 pixels? Yeah, it's sort of good. Okay, so we have this one. But one problem that we might face later on is if we want to change these numbers to total tries and your tries, we need to reset everything in here, or maybe the whole text, and this is sort of not nice, not the best way to do that. So one thing we can do is add another helper function, make it private, and void, and we can say update tries. And we can pass these total tries and your tries in this function, but as this is sort of, these numbers are actually belong to this whole frame, we can add them as class variables. So we have a private integer total tries and private integer, let's call them player tries. And we do not need to set them to 0, as the 0 is the default value to the integer. And in here we can say, we can take this one and put it here and have the total tries as this class is total tries variable, and same in here. This class's player tries is going to be put in here. And in the beginning, we can simply set this to empty string, have it there, and after we have created it, we can call this update tries. Where is it? Oh, update tries, here it is. So as these two values are 0 at the beginning, we should have the same result. And we don't, because we are not setting it actually to this try label element. So this class's try label, we can set text, and we're setting text to try HTML. And if we're looking at it now, we have the actual text in here. And if we would update these numbers, we would update these actual variables and then call this update tries method again, and it would simply change these numbers and have this tries label up to date. Okay, one more thing, we have created the basics. We have the question text, we have the tries, we have the status. So the next one would be the input field for the answers. Let's lose that and say this class's answer input is new JText field. And one thing we can set is we can have multiple columns. Let's say we can have 3 columns, so the input can be like 3 lines of text. We can also add answer input. We could actually create another method like this one, create new label and create new answer input. But as we will be using only one object in here, we can actually leave it in here. But if we would have 2 or more inputs, then we would definitely want to create a new method for this. So we wouldn't repeat our code multiple times. So again, this can be 60 from the left. Let's have it at 140 from the top, and 400 wide, and 60 high. Okay, then we can say this answer input. We can set the font to, let's have the text font. Yeah, let's use the text font for now. And what is else? This container. Damn, it's still doing that, what I don't like. Come on. Okay, this is a little bit annoying. Okay, we're adding this answer input to the container. Let's run it and see if everything's fine. Yeah, we have the input and everything's fine. We have the size of it, everything's cool. So we can close that. One thing I would like to change is have the text font and have the status font. Yes, status font, and this will be a little bit smaller, and I'll show the italic font, and the status font will be used for the status label. And if we look at that, it's sort of a little bit different, and maybe we can drop this one lower and closer to this element, to the input field. And status label, we would say, let's say 90 from the top. Yeah, kind of maybe even 100. And there are tools to build all of this in a visual, with visual tools, with dragging and dropping. But these are just some 5, 6, 7 elements, and we don't need to add any extra garbage to the project, we can simply do all that manually. But if it would be a large project, you definitely want to use some extra tools that would help you create these frames visually, so you can see what you're doing, and you can drag these elements 5 pixels to the top, 2 pixels to the left, and actually see on the fly how you're changing it. But we would stick to this one for now. So that's that. And one thing, okay, I think we have the basics ready. One thing I came up with just now is we're not going to have the answer button, but we're going to have the player press enter after the answer is inputted, because it's sort of easier. You have the cursor in the input field, you just write the answer, press enter. If you're wrong, you do it again. You don't need to use the keyboard and the mouse at the same time. So to be able to read what kind of button is pressed on this element, we would need a listener. And there's sort of 3 main listeners: key listener, mouse listener, and mouse motion listener. Obviously, the one we need is a key listener, and key is any of the keyboard keys, obviously, and we can implement key listener. And in this class, we would implement key listener and say what is going to happen when different keys are being pressed. And right now, when we implement this key listener interface, we're having an error which says the one is a warning, whatever, and the second, key listener cannot be resolved. Of course, we import it, and now the class has a warning. And basically, we don't have multiple methods that need to be there. And one thing we can do is just say, click on the warning and say add unimplemented methods. And we can see on the right side 3 methods will be implemented. And we can double click on that, go down in the page and see that we have 3 new methods. So basically, these are methods that we need to say what's going to happen when a key is typed, when a key is pressed, and when a key is released. So typed is, pressed is when the key is pressed down, released is when the key is released from this press, and typed is when both of these actions have happened, when the key is being pressed and released after that. So basically, released and typed is going to be fired at the same time. But we're not going to use this, and we're not going to use this. The only thing is we need to have those methods here, so we are actually telling this key listener what you need to do. So basically, we say when key is typed or key is released, you do this, which means nothing. You just skip through that. But we need to have that because a key listener is an interface, and he says, I need to have these 3 results where I need to go, and you need to tell me where to go. We tell you don't go anywhere, just don't do anything. But we cannot delete these methods because then the interface wouldn't have any methods to go to. An interface only knows when the key is typed, he's looking for the key typed method, and he goes there and calls it. And he calls it and doesn't do anything. But let's focus on key pressed method. The one thing we can do at the beginning is just simply say key pressed. And we can run it. We can set the console higher, and when we do something, nothing's happening, right? We sort of have the key listener and we have the methods, but nothing's happening. Why? Because this key listener doesn't know what to listen to. He doesn't know that he has to listen to this one or any other input field on this page. So what we had to do is take our answer input and add a key listener to it. So basically we say simply add key listener, and we need to add a class that has a key listener in it. A class that has these 3 methods that we just created. And the class that has it is this class. We could also create a new class that would implement key listener, let's say our magical key listener class, and then we could say we would implement new magical key listener class constructor to it. but we don't need it. Those methods will be so simple that we can put it all together and have this key listener in this class. So what's going to happen when some key event is happening on this answer input text field, then it's going to look in this class, look for key pressed method, and fire whatever in it. It's going to run this method. So when we close the previous one and run it again, and now we do something, we can see that the key pressed button is firing. The method is firing, so the result is called. On the backspace, on the space, on the enter, on every key, the method is fired. But one thing we need to have is understand which key is being pressed. One thing we can do is take this event that's passed in this method by default. And event object is great. It gives you everything. We can say the key and E. And simply, if you don't have an idea what kind of method needs to be called, you can either browse through everything, all these methods, or you can just try your luck. For example, I need to get the key, like name or key value or something. So we can just say get key, and we can see what we have: the location, which is probably the X and Y coordinates, the key code, and the key char. The key char returns the char value, which is probably like its symbol that we actually pressed. We don't need that. We want the key code, which is an integer value, because an enter doesn't have a key char, a backspace doesn't have a key char, a tab or escape or any other those specific keys doesn't have their own value. So we want to go with the key code, which every element, every key has. And now when we go with it, I'm just pressing some buttons and these key values are pressed. When I press space, it's 32. When I press enter, it's 10. Backspace, it also has their own key. And now I'm pressing different other buttons like control and alt and space, everything. Oh, this is not there, space. Everything is firing. But we only need the enter key. So one thing we could do is detect which key is enter, like number 10. And then we could say maybe if event get key code equals 10. But when you're reading this kind of code later on, you don't understand, you don't remember which is 10 if you don't leave enter comment to it. So what we can use is key event's default values. So we can say key event dot, and it has VK, which means those are these keys of the keyboard. So 0 to 9 are those number keys, and A and B and C and all these numbers. And we can just say VK enter. And what it has is it's the same integer 10, but it's just visually more appealing and the code is more understandable. If somebody comes to the function maybe after half a year, I can know, okay, I'm looking for the key code if the key is enter, right? It's simple to read. And we can say if the key code is enter, then we are going to input the value. And maybe we will read what's inputted, what's in the field, and so on. But in here, we are sort of nesting the code inside the if. And as we do not have the else branch in here, the better solution would be to say, okay, if the key code is not enter, we're just simply returning from the function. And if it is enter, then all the code will be continued from here. So this is called a guard statement that's like clearing up unwanted values in the function. So we can say string text is what we actually want to work with. Is this classes, what was it, question, no, it's not question, answer input. And from the answer input, we can also wing it and try to find it, and I already have it. We need to get text. If you don't know, if you just write get, and you can look for what you want to get. And obviously the text is the element that you want, and you simply get text from the input field. One thing I want to do is have all my answers on the uppercase, so I will set all these answer tries also to uppercase and trim them if you have some spaces on the sides. So the user wouldn't lose the question if he writes something in a lowercase or adds a space on in the front, right? So we cleared his input up, and we can also add another guard statement and say if the text length is 0, we also return. If he just presses enter on empty input, we just don't care about it. We actually want to read his real answers. And then we can say user guessed, and then his text, his actual answer. And if we run the code, if we press other buttons, then nothing is firing. This user guessed text is not pressed because this method is ending in the very front. So when we press enter, we can see that we get the result what we needed. We get the input to the uppercase, and even if we have spaces on the sides, it's still the same thing. It's trimming the spaces from the sides. And one more thing, if it's empty, we also have nothing's happening. I'm pressing enter, nothing's happening. Even with spaces in here, nothing is happening because the input is taken, trimmed to take off the unnecessary spaces, and then we are checking the length. So right now the length is like 20 or something, but after trimming, it's empty, and the function ends here. So what we want to do is, when we know right now that this is an actual try, user inputted some kind of answer, pressed enter, then we can say this class is player tries, we add 1. And after we update these tries, we can say update tries, call up this class is update tries method. But one thing is sort of problematic. When we update the player tries, we also would need to update the total tries, right? Because my tries also counts as one of the total tries. So we could add a method that when we want to add a player try, it also adds total tries, which should be the real deal and the better solution right now. But as we are only creating a prototype to later work with the database, then we are just going to say total tries ++ as well. But if we wouldn't use a database, the better version would be to say this add player try, and then we would add a method that would hold these 2 lines in it. So we wouldn't be worried that in some place when we add player try, we forget to add it to the total tries. That's why we need to keep those things in one function. But in here, it's just for the beginning. Later on, when we connect the database, the code will be a little bit different. And so here we update the tries, and we can say boolean is correct answer, or just is correct. And the user is correct if his inputted text equals some kind of object. An object it needs to be equal to is this class is correct answer that we set at the constructor at the beginning. The correct answer is the one that's passed in the constructor, which is this one. And here we can say if is correct. What we need to say, we can set status to something. We can say this status label, set text as just we did before, and we can say, yep, you are right. Congrats. And if he's not correct, then we can say nope, try again. Something simple like that. Okay, let's close the previous ones and run it again. And if we input something, we have nope, try again. And if we update, this is not changing because it's setting the status label to the same text that it was before, but we can see that the total tries and your tries is updating even if we are pressing the same answer. So one thing we would need to do is prevent the user from going crazy and pressing enter on the same answer over and over again, like we can see right now. Let's see what happens. Oh, if we go over 100, then this thing breaks, so we need to fix that as well. So after each try, we would want to set this text to nothing, to empty, right? So user can input new text. So if I write, let's say, lion, and press enter, we are told, nope, try again, you're wrong. Then we need to delete it and write it again. So on the key pressed, we can do, let's say after this, it doesn't matter, we can say this, answer input, set text. It also has the set text method, and we can set it to empty string. Also, to not have this method the same over and over again, so we would actually know that this answer is accepted, we can say nope, try for maybe you have been wrong. This player tries times. Try again. And maybe we can say in here, if this player tries equals to 1, we can set text to just nope, try again. And on the else, if he's tried more than one time, we can say you've tried that many times, try again. One more thing that we needed to fix was this width of these try labels. And we can simply say we have it 520 from the left, and it will be 30 more width. And let's see if that fixes it. It's more wide, so it can hold the values. And now we can say lion. We press enter, we see that nope, try again, but we lost the input, so we can input the new stuff. And we say dog, enter, you've been wrong 2 times, try again, we set something else. And now if we go crazy and press enter, nothing's happening because we have empty input. Let's try to have the correct answer. Nope, I think, did we lose the, what did we lose? Okay, I think I inputted the right one. Something wasn't right. Okay, let's see if that's repeated twice. Yep, something's wrong. So I think I'm inputting the correct one, but it says that I'm wrong. Does the text equal the correct answer? What we can do is simply print out the text and print out the correct answer. And then see what's happening, because these are the 2 values that are working in this situation. Okay, the one thing we didn't do is we put this the answer try to the uppercase, but we didn't work with the correct answer. So what we want to do is, when we're setting the correct answer in this class, we can say answer to uppercase. So everything is uppercase and we don't have any problems later on. Now if we say who, maybe like this, it's still the correct answer. It doesn't matter if it's uppercase or lowercase. We can also do that, achieve the same thing by saying equals ignore case. This does the same thing, and it would sort of be better to use this one because we don't need to change the correct answer or the input string, and we could save in the database the actual string that user has inputted, and we don't need to change anything. We just equal ignore case, and we can maybe not set this one to uppercase, and we can not set this one to uppercase as well. And we go with it, and we say who, and it's still correct because it's equal. It's checking if these strings are equal, ignoring the fact that the cases might be different. Okay, so that is sort of the basis that we need to have. Later on, we will update this this class a little bit. But one thing we can go to is work a little bit with the database. And so one thing we need to do is, did we add the, I don't remember. Yes, we added the library. So one thing we can start to do is create the basics. This is a connection. This is a statement. We'll use that one as well, and private result set. And Control-Shift-O, and we can import everything. And be careful, do not import from the MySQL JDBC, but import statement and connection from the SQL class. And then we can set the constructor. So this class's connection is driver manager, get connection, and string URL. And then the username and the password. So what we need to have is JDBC as the driver, MySQL as the database, and the address to the localhost address to the database if it's some sort of different IP address. If it's localhost, we can use 127.0.0.1, or we can simply say localhost. And then the port. This is default MySQL 3306, and then /n database name, which is, I think it was Q&A game. We can look. Yep, Q&A game it is. And then we have two variables, which is username and the password. One thing we need to do is wrap all of this in a try-catch block, because these method calls throw different types of exceptions. So we need to catch them and say sysout problems with database setup. So we have the connection, and we say this statement equals connection create statement. So this is the basic what we need to do. One thing we can actually change is put these ones as variables. This is sort of the better way to do this, and actually the best way to do this is have these values stored somewhere in the config file, and when you're starting to read you're initializing this database class, you're reading these values from the config file, so you do not have these usernames and passwords hard-coded in the code itself, right? So anybody who opens up can see which is the database and where's the root and what password you're using. So that's sort of a no-no, but as we're using it locally and for the simplicity for this project, we're not gonna do anything with these. We're just gonna use them, leave them here. One thing we would want to do is add the add the method create tables if we do not have them at the beginning of the project. So we can say private void create tables and say string create question table is a string and create answer table or answer try table is another string. And then we can say this class, we would insert and we would call these two strings. Number 1 and number 2. One thing, we need to find out what sort of query we need to insert these tables, and we can go to Heidi and take the create code and just simply copy it, put it in one line and just paste it in here, or we can do it just like that. Is it correct? We don't need the line numbers. I'm just going to go into another text editor where I can simplify the putting everything in one line, and so I can put it right here. So this is the first one. Yep, and then I'm going to take the second one. Wait, did I put it in the right way? Yeah, question table and then the answer table. So this is the code that creates the table if it didn't exist at the beginning of the project. If you are maybe setting it up at the first time, then you need to create these database tables as well. So when you're starting and you're setting the project up, you don't need, you just need to create a database, open up the database server, and everything would be accessible. So you're creating tables if they're not there. One thing we need to do again is create the insert method. An insert method is going to be private, again void insert, and we're going to have the string query passed to it. This is also going to be wrapped within try catch block. And here we can say problems with insert query. And maybe we can print the query as well. So we can actually find what is the cause of the problem. And with here we can print out the error exception text. And here we can do this class's statement. Execute update and pass the query in it. So execute update is working with insert and update queries when we're just running something and we don't need the result back, we're just executing the update. I think it works with insert as well. Maybe it was execute, but I think it was execute update. So we have the insert and we have the create tables. Again, if we would run this code just when we have these tables created, we would have a problem saying the table already exists. So we would need another keyword saying create table if not exists. So now we run it. We have a warning that the table exists, but we do not have the error. So we can copy this one into both of our queries. So we do not run into problems when we are running it and if we have the database tables ready. So if we have the tables, these queries are just going to be skipped and we can move on from there. So what sort of methods do we need? We can just create a prototype. So one thing is private, let's say string. We need to get active question. What do we need in the question? We need ID, we need the question text, and we need the correct answer. We could use let's say a string array having all these three in there, or the better would be we'd create a new object saying this is going to be a question object, and it will have all these values in it. So integer ID, integer question, or maybe this is a question class, we don't call the variables, the parameters question, the same as the class name. So the text, it's not that integer definitely. It's a string and string answer as well. We need to have the ID as well because when we're going to update something on this question, we need to know which question to update, right? We need this unique identifier. And simply we can say source generate constructor using fields, have all three of them, and have the basic element in here. So we will have a question queue. Our question is new question. But we're going to need a string or integer ID, a string text, and string answer. And we're going to pass them to this constructor ID, text, and answer. And how we can do that, we can ask the database, give us the last question that is not answered yet, and well, that doesn't have a winner. And what we can do in here is say, we can go back to the basics. So we need a question, or maybe the oldest. So with let's use the one with the lowest ID that is not answered. And the query is simple: select all from table question, order by, or maybe not order by. First, we need where what is it? Is answered equals to 0, so basically false. And now we can order by ID ascending, meaning from the smallest to the highest. And one more thing, we can limit to 1 because we need the oldest row. And if we run it, we don't get anything. Why? Because we don't have any rows. Obviously, let's add a couple of the rows just simply as an example. Let's have the who let the dogs out. Answer will be who. His answer is 0, and winner name is nothing. Let's add another one just so we have more. What is the capital of Canada? Ottawa is not answered, and home. Okay, let's have another one. Insert row. Maybe what is the capital of? Well, let's have Colombia. What is the capital? Bogota. I think should be 0. Okay. Let's have these ones a little bit larger. Cool. Now we have multiple. We can try it, and now we get the oldest question that has not been answered. If we say that this is answered by, well, me, and we can rerun the query, and now we get the second question. So we know this query works. We go back to 0. How was it? Insert null. And we can copy this and go to the method and say string query equals to this. And now we need to wrap everything in try catch again. The first thing we need to do is run this query and put the results in the results set. So the results set, wait, not the results set, this class is results set equals the statement, how was it, execute, and we're running the execute query, execute query here. We can see that we get the results set back. Execute a query and we get the result from it, and we need to pass the SQL string, which is going to be our query string, and then we get the result set back. And the result set is always going to be a list of all the results that we get. For example, if we don't have the limit, it's going to be a list of all these rows in here. And even if we have limit 1, we know that it's going to be a list of 1. So we still need to loop through that because we need to take one of the array. How we can do that is go with while this rs next and then say his ID equals this result set get integer, and we get it by the column name, which is ID. The text is result set, again get string by the column name, which is what? The question and then the answer. So the question was the ID, no, the ID is lowercase. So the question and the answer is this result set get string and the answer. And now we can create a new question, and it's not going to be, this method is not going to be a string, it's going to be a question type, and it's going to be nothing in the beginning. Or we can actually say we don't need to loop through that. We can say we are executing the query if we found the result set and there's something to loop through, that once we find the first and create the first question, we just return this question back, and we just stop everything else that's going on in this method. But the problem is this method is still having the problem. It says it might not return the question. The problem would probably say it's probably not returning the question, because if this try block fails or the result set is empty, it's not going to return the question. So what we need to do if nothing works, if this line is not run, we can say just at the end we return null. Right? If nothing works, then return something. And now the method is fine, we can get active question. One more thing we need to do is say private, maybe void, add answer try. Because each time we try to answer, we need to add this element to the database, our try. And so we can say string answer try integer question ID, because we need to say which ID which question did we try to answer. And we will have a query again. And this is going to be an insert query. We can jump back to other table, and we can say insert into table answer try. And then we say which columns are we trying to insert into. So we have this one as the empty one. So we need a question ID, player text, and the other ones. So question ID, we are not setting the ID because it's auto-generated. So the question ID, player text, as this is a keyword in SQL, so we need to wrap that in these quotation marks. Then is correct, and is winner. Wait, is correct and is winner? That's wrong. We don't need a is winner. Oh no, we need is winner, of course, because he might be correct, but he might not be the last one who answered. Maybe like two people answered almost at the same time, but one was a little bit late. So they both might be correct, but one of them is only going to be winner. So is correct, is winner, and answer time. And now we're inserting values. The question ID is going to be that question ID, let's say 1 at the beginning. The player is going to be, we need to pass that one as well. So string player name. So let's just say me. The text is going to be the answer, and say who, and is correct is going to need to be determined from here. So here we can select if this answer was correct. So we need to say select answer from table question where ID equals to this question ID that I passed. Let's say 1 for now, but we are going to concatenate this this string in here later on. So select answer from table question where ID is 1, limit 1, and then we say if this one equals to the answer that I gave. So if the correct answer of this question is the same as I gave, then everything's fine. We can set it to database, or we can also go back to the Java code, and we don't need to actually determine it back in the database, because in here in the game frame we already know if the user answered correctly or not. So one thing we need to do is pass boolean is correct, because we can determine it here, and it's going to be a lot simpler in here. So if he's correct, we are saying that okay, he's correct. So say yes, he was correct in this, or he wasn't correct in this case, 0. And then is winner is going to be select. This is going to be a little bit more difficult. Let's leave it at the end. And answer time is going to be a current timestamp, which means right now. And this is sort of a little bit more complex, but bear with me. Case, or yeah, is it case when if the player answered correctly or player answered incorrectly, then we can simply say he's not a winner. So if this one, we can say 0, because this is going to be the element that we are that we are passing through from the Java code. So if this is 0, then the isWinner is also 0. It's not going to look as ridiculous as here because this is going to be a variable in Java code. Or else we need to determine if the question that we are trying to answer by this ID, if he already was answered. And if it wasn't answered, and or actually we can create it in one sentence. If the question wasn't answered and this question is correct, then this guy is a new winner. So let's just do that. So what we need to do is we need to see if this guy was this question was answered. So what we need to do is select is answered from table question where ID equals to this question ID that we will pass, number 1. And again, limit 1 because this subquery needs to return 1 element. And if that is equal to 0 and this element that we're going to pass is also a 0, or if it's 1, the element that we pass, if it's 1, then it's correct answer. Nobody answered it previously correctly, so now we are the winner. We can try to insert. I'm pretty certain it's not going to work. Oh, affected rows 1. So I think if we go to the data, refresh. Yeah, so the values are a bit wrong because I said something that wouldn't happen in real life. The answer is not correct, but he is the winner. So let's delete 1. And let's say again, because we passed 0, so this is the same kind of value. So if we run, let's go back, refresh, and say, so the question ID with 1, player me tried to answer Whoo-Hoo as the answer. It was not correct and he was not the winner. But answer time is the one that we are having right now. But if we are answering, what was the correct answer? Whoo. Okay, if he's answering Who, then he will be correct. And this will be 1. And we are answering, and where is it? Answer try. We refresh, and now we can see that the next try was a correct answer, and he is the winner because previously there wasn't any winner. And let's say the other guy also tries the same thing. He's also correct, but he guessed a little bit later. And now we can run it, and we can refresh. And we can see that he's also a winner. So we have a problem. Select is answered from the question where ID is 1. But he was answered. No, the question wasn't answered because we didn't update this one. We needed to update after the... So when we were... Let's delete this one. The first one answered incorrectly. Everything's fine. The second one answered correctly, and he was the first winner. As we find the winner, we need to update the question as well. Boom. The question's answered, and the winner name is me. And now the question is fine. Everything's set. And in here, when we are trying again, the other guy is guessing a second later. We can go back to answer tries. And now we can see the other guy answered correctly, but he's not the winner because somebody else answered before him, and the question is answered already. And there's a winner name. We can do that by the question, or we can maybe do that by the answer tries. We can maybe say select. Where's the data? Select count of something from table question, but not the table question, but table. This is going to be a little bit easier for us to determine. Select from answer try, where ID is the same as the question, and no, not the ID, but the question ID. So select how many tries are to this question, and how many of them were correct. And is correct is 1. So if there has been a correct answer already, and the count is larger than 0, basically, then we cannot say that this guy is a winner. So to be a winner, we need to say the count of previously correct answers to this question needs to be 0. And his answer also needs to be correct. And now if we run it, there's a problem specified twice. Yeah, there we go. We need to create an alias if we use a table more than once. So let's see here, other guy tried. He's incorrect because there's already a correct answer before. If we set that to 0 and he tries again, we refresh, he's also incorrect. Why? Because we select count from table answer try, the question is 1 and is correct is 0. If he is correct, so we need to check what's happening in this query. We see the count is 4. Oh yeah, because he didn't need to be winner, he just needed to be correct, obviously. If all the previous guys would be incorrect, and let's just delete all of his. If previously the guy who guessed he wouldn't be correct, and now I am correct, then I input, and then I say refresh, and now I'm correct and I'm the winner. So basically what this says is, yeah, let's leave it at that. So I'm inputting question ID, which is the first one, the player, which is the second one, the text, which is this, the is correct, which is 1 is true. So basically, if I'm true, and then I'm inserting the is a winner value. So is he a winner or not? And he is a winner only if the count of answer tries for this question and which are right is 0. So basically, if there's no correct answers before me and I answered correctly, then this whole statement would be true and he would be the new winner. And the answer time is the one that I just set. And if I'm running this again, and I say I'm not a winner, I answered correctly, but I'm not a winner because there is already a correct answer before me. It doesn't matter if he is a winner or not. We just need to determine if he's correct. This one. Right, I'm not a winner because there was a correct answer before me. This should be the real deal. So we can take this one, go back to Java and say, this is what I'm doing, and let's just home and like this. And at the end, we'll have this. Control-Shift-F, we format, everything's fine. The one thing to remember if you work with databases is, I'm sure you've heard of it, but these are SQL injections. And this is very important with anything you work with databases. Because basically, if you are allowing this value to be simply concatenated, let's say a question ID like that, or maybe let's say the answer try, then the player who knows that this piece of application is susceptible to SQL injections, he could say that his answer starts with this one, with a single quote. Then it goes as semicolon. It just simply ends the query. Then it goes with two lines, two dashes, meaning everything after me is a comment, so it doesn't count. And in between, I can say delete all from table users and something like that. If his answer, what he inputs is this, then we would lose our database table with the name table users, which most of the times the database has the table like that. So this is something very important that you have to know before you work with the databases. So what we need to do is somehow work around it. And what we can work with is in these places where we need variables, these will be for, we will leave question marks in here, and the question ID and is correct, and this one as well. So in the place of question marks, we would add actual variables. And in here, we would use a prepared statement and say this connections. We would prepare statement with a query. And then we would say this prepared statement, we would set, and we just simply need to set these elements one by one. So we have 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. So set string, is the first one string? No, it's an ID. So set int, parameter index and x value. We can see in here, parameter index is simply from the 1, 2, 3 and up. It doesn't start with 0, it starts with 1. And the x is the value that we want to be put in this place. So we need to set int, the first position, and we say that the value will be question ID. And this prepared statement class will work and will do everything, will escape all the strings and will make it all nice and clear. What's the problem? Unhandle SQL exception. Of course, we need to wrap it all in try-catch block. Problems with adding answer try. Okay, then we have it all in the try-catch block, and we do all of this for all the input fields, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So only the one will be the integer, the next is, the first one was question ID, the second is player, so this is set string. String. The text is also going to be a string, so the player is player names that we passed through. And also if he would set his player name to something as I showed before, he would also be able to create an SQL injection. If you're more interested in that, you can definitely search for YouTube videos for SQL injections and find what can be done with that. You can steal and destroy a lot of data with that. So the next one after player name is the text, and which is answer try. After that, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth is question ID again. So that's integer. Question ID, it leaves there. And is correct. Yeah, it needs to be 0 actually, always, so we don't need to set that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this one wait, it's not question ID. Question ID, player name, the text, and this is the player correct? And this is correct. And in here we can say if he's correct, then we pass 0. Else, no, if he's correct, we pass 1. If he's not correct, we pass 0. This is a ternary operator. And then the question ID is number 5, and the 6 is the same thing. Is he correct? So we can copy that one as well. We could create a variable for this, but to keep it simple, we'll leave it at that. So these thingies, these methods, are just basically changing these question marks, swapping with these actual values. But what it also does is escapes these values, saying that you are not a string, or you are not a part of this element. You are just a text, and you cannot be executed. Right? So basically, you can write whatever you want, but you will never make SQL injections. And then what we need to do is this prepared statement, execute update. Update, because insert is also like an update. It does something, it changes the database. So we have an answer try. What the hell is wrong with this one? Is never used. Well, it will be later on. So it's just a warning. We'll use it. So we have a method add answer try. We have a method get active question. And we are creating tables as well. So what we can do here is question is, well, first we need to set up the database object. And then we can ask database get active. What's the question? Oh, it's a private method. We don't need it private. We need it default, as we need to be able to access it from outside. db get active question, and then we have a question object. And from here we will say question text and question answer we will pass, and we'll also pass the question ID, because we need to know it in here, so we'll be able to pass it later on to the database method. So private string question ID, and here's, sorry, integer question ID, and this question ID equals the past question ID. Yes, no, because this is string. Again, I wanted integer. Okay, and now, where's the problem? Is there any problem? Nope, there's no problems. Now we are getting an active question, and when we are trying to answer something, these ones we can remove. When we press the key and we answered a question, we can update tries, and we can also we need to also add this try into the database. So we need to say, we can say we would need a database object in this class to be accessible, or we can just say that in the main class, what happened? ID. In the main class, we will have a static variable database DB and set it to that. And in here, we can just say from the main class is database. What's up? Static database. Oh, not the main class. It's start class. Database object. We are saying what we need to do Again, this other method is private, but we need it to be default. So add answer try, add answer try. And now we can add all these things that we need in there. We can copy so we can see what we need. The answer try, the actual text, which is the text. The question ID is this class's question ID that we had. The is correct is, we need to have it under this one, and is correct. And player name is, well, let's have it as me for now, because later on we'll have the input field maybe in the same frame, maybe in maybe before we would actually have the start frame, start window, where you can just input something, choose a level or whatever. Basically, for now, we'll have the name as me. So now we are adding an answer try. There's a problem. The method add answer try string integer bool and string of the type db is not visible because it wasn't saved. So basically, what it did, Eclipse showed us, helped us a little bit, saying that it didn't say that this method doesn't exist. It said it wasn't visible, which means if it's private, it says it's there, but I cannot access it. I cannot see it because it's not set for me to be visible. It's private for them. But if I say it's default, then the same package can access it. So everything's fine. Let's try to run it. I don't know how much of this might work correctly. Now we are getting what is the capital of Canada. And why are we getting that? Because this was already answered, right? We changed something to the database. So this is the oldest question that is not answered yet. So what's the question? Capital of Canada, something, enter. Nope, try again. And now we can check the database and see that for the question ID number 2, we actually added a try. What is the default try? Toronto, I think everybody thinks. And we check, here it is, our tries and the values as well. Washington, Canada City, Ottawa. Yep, you are right, congrats. And now we can see what happens. This is correct, was true, but in here is winner was not set to true. If we say Ottawa again, we can say that the same thing happened basically. And now we need to find out why we weren't set to the winner. We go back to the database. Okay, we are checking the count of tries with the question ID of 1, and is correct 1. I don't know, I set it to 0. The count of correct answers for this question need to be 0. Yeah, we need to delete these ones for that to work correctly. Whatever. Let's say somebody tried, didn't succeed. I'll do something else again, and now I say Ottawa. Ottawa. Yep, you're right. Congrats. And now we go back to the database, and we can see, yep, this was wrong. And now I am the winner because before me there wasn't any correct answer for this question ID, for this question. So now I'm right. And one more thing we need to do is, if I am correct, then I need to update this question so he's answered and set the winner name. But before we do that, I think we'll do that in the next lecture, in the next video. But in here, I want to add something a little interesting. I I want to update these things and determine if the question has been answered already or not. So let's start with these things. So basically, if we are not doing anything, we want these tries to be updated, right? We need to get the correct answer every time when this thing changes. So the simple thing we can do is, let's have it at the start method, or we can actually do it at the database level. Or do we? I'm not really sure where it belongs. Okay, I'm gonna leave it in here, but you can figure out where you want to put it. Let's have it private as well for now. Void update. Okay, I changed my mind. I don't want it here because I don't have an access to this JFrame object from the database. Let's do that. Let's have this as a class variable, so we can access it from another method. So static void update tries, and we're going to get tries from database, and we'll say JFrame update tries is private method, so we need to say set total tries. Okay, we'll have integer tries is something, and then we'll set total tries. And we need to make a method in here as well that works with it. Private, not private, just void set total tries. We are passing total or new total tries, and we'll say this class's total tries is this new total tries, and then we're updating tries as well. Yeah, this is for now. And in here we need to say db get total tries for what? Let's have this one as accessible, the question ID. So we can say JFrame question ID. So we're asking database, hey database, give us all the tries for this question that has been there. And in here, we'll have a integer, get total tries by integer question ID. The Rabitor again. And the catch problem with this one. And what we need to do is set query. And query is simple. Select count of, I'm putting here 1 because it doesn't matter what we count from that row. We can count IDs, we can count text, we can count player names. It's still going to add up to the same value. So we can count just 1, which means like instances of these rows, as count from table answer try where question ID equals 2. And right now we can just say question ID. As we are getting this ID from the database, we'll make it simple. And then the same thing as in here. We're executing the query, and we are getting the count, which is an integer. And as soon as we get it, we will return the count as a result of this method. or if nothing happens, we just return 0 because we didn't find the count. So again, what it does, it counts all these tries where question ID is this question ID that we are interested in. So we save it in this variable, pass it to the JFrame class, setting total tries to this, and then setting total tries. This variable is updated, and then we're updating total tries. But one thing we need to do here is, if we are just, say, let's call update tries, what's going to happen? It's going to call it once and that's it. If we're going to put it in a never-ending loop, it's going to run only this method, and the next things will never be run because it will be in the never-ending loop. But we want to run this one and forget about it and move on with these things. And what we can do is run a parallel thread. And what we want to do here is say thread equals new thread. And here we're simply going to define what's going to be in this thread. And only thing we need for simple thread is a run method. So what we're going to do with this run, and it's going to be this thing. We're getting tries from the database and go and setting it to the JFrame class. And we're going to say pause for 1 second, or actually let's have it at the top. Pause for 1 second and then go again. And then this one will be in a do while loop, which is going to be never-ending loop. And once we set it, we have the thread. We can say thread start. And one thing we need is a pause method, which is going to be static void pause, passing the milliseconds. Again, wrapping everything in try-catch block, and simply say thread sleep for as many milliseconds as you told me in the past variable. So basically we're setting up a parallel thread that's going to check for total tries every 1 second and give this value to the JFrame class. Let's see how it works. Let's hope that nothing breaks. One thing we could do is, well, we can see the total tries is already updated to 5. But one thing we can do is just add the text output in here, checking tries, so we can see that it actually works. So we can see every 1 second it's checking for tries. And if I'm doing something, then I'm updating my tries, and it's sort of not so interesting. But what I can do is, first thing, I'm going to remove this one because it's annoying. And I'm going to start one game, and I'm going to start other game. And here I'm going to say Toronto, and this updated to this one, and my tries is 1. But in here I didn't do anything, but it still updated total tries to 8. So what it does, even if I'm not playing, in the background it's checking how many tries has been there in total. Right? So I can do whatever I want, and each second it's updating total tries. So even if it's a little bit late, but it's just half a second. And the same in here, if I do something in here, the total tries is updated in there. So this is what I can do. And then I can say Ottawa, and then, yep, you are right, and congrats. But when I said you're right and congrats, nothing was told in here. In here, we would actually want to say, oh, you are too slow, somebody else answered it correctly. So we would want the same type of method as this one. We want to check for winner. And what we want to do, maybe let's say in a parallel thread. And what we want to do is check if this question was answered correctly. Maybe by someone else. So we want to do the same thing, get the latest answer that was correct, and maybe that was who was a winner. And if there is more than 0 winners, then you say, sorry, dude, you were late. And one more thing I wanted to add, I already forgot. Yeah, this update to total tries. Oh yes, and when this question is answered either by me or by someone else, we want to reset to the next question. So what we want to do here is create another method called setup, which is sort of like init, but initialization method is going to be the first one that happens. Let's save it, and happens once it creates the frame. It creates this label, it creates this label, the input field, all the borders, the sizes and everything. But the setup method will be specific to each question. It will set the value for this question, for this label as the question. It will set the value for the status label. It will set the value for tries and your tries and everything. So every time we have a new question, we set the title to new one, we reset the status to whatever was at the beginning, and we set total tries and my tries to whichever is for this question. It should be 0 at the beginning, because if it's a new question and nobody answered it before, then it should be 0. So this is what we're going to do in the next video. We will update and be ready for next question. We will check if somebody else has answered it correctly, and we will also add name inputs. And maybe one more thing we could try is, let's say if they're name inputs, and if name equals to admin, then he would have a question input list or something. So we don't need to add questions from the database. Maybe admin can write them individual frame. But to sum up this one, I know it has been a pretty long video, but to work with visuals, with the databases, to figure out what's going where and creating extra objects and saving everything, updating and changing and getting their values, it's sort of a lot of work. So we create a frame that have some sort of elements that contain some values. We can change those values by whatever methods we want, and we can set a parallel thread. Most of the times it's better to have parallel thread that just keeps checking if something has changed, and then I'm saying, hey frame, change this one. I know there's a new value for this one, so it changes these values. And if we are setting this one up, the application up from one source, and this source is a database, or it can also be a file. If we're setting it up from one source, then they're basically both going to run the same type because they have the same source. And if you want to create some sort of a game or of maybe tic-tac-toe, it can work also in the same way. we are working in our frame with what we are inputting, and then the other person is constantly checking the database if there has been changes, maybe if the opposing player has made a move. And if he has made a move, we are drawing this in our frame. That's sort of the idea of how we can work with it. But the difference between more actiony games is, let's say we have a game of Pong where there are two paddles of, I don't know if I want to ruin this one, but there are two paddles of the sides of the frame, and then there's a ball that's just jumping around, and you need to move your paddle up and down. This is a little bit more tricky because you cannot ask the database every millisecond where the opponent's ball is, or where the ball is, where the opponent's paddle is, so I can see. It's sort of not the best way to do that. But for that, we can use sockets. Oh, this needs to be A. We can use sockets, which is basically an open tube between database and the application, and it constantly can look for things like that, for games, for some kind of changes from the outside. But in here, we can work without sockets. We can just simply call the database and ask, hey, has anybody answered the question? How many tries does this test totally have? So with this basic knowledge, you can pretty much create a lot of things that are interacting between multiple tables. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next video when we'll finish this thing, and, well, happy coding.